Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we'll be discussing Book 4, Chapter 23 of Deadhouse Gates, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I know that this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view. No critique here. We're just going to be marveling at how amazing this book is.
We'll be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that haven't read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Now, a quick warning, today's episode contains descriptions of extreme violence and is not recommended for children.
Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we're posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we would really like to hear from you, and we really mean that. So if you have any comments or feedback that you'd like to send us, just reach out to us at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
All right, before we get into the episode today, I wanted to address the unknown quantity of Wu as the
Woo?
name of the Malazan world. So last week, the chapter kicked off with a poem by Wu, and you had heard on Reddit and other areas of the internet that some people were referring to the Malazan world as Wu.
Right.
I did a little research, and from the Malazan wiki, quote, Steven Erikson has jokingly called the planet in the Malazan series Wu. The name has become a casual and affectionate term for the planet among fans.
Nice.
The Malazan world is a globe that is similar in size to Earth or possibly larger, but there is no official unified name for it, end quote. Separately, I found this in a Reddit post. Quote, I think Erikson used it in early non-canon / behind-the-scenes talk. It seems like he and Esselmont used it as the name for the whole world in their tabletop RPG days, but is not a canon word for the world in universe from any of the characters' perspective. From what I can gather, it seems to come from early games where Kellanved was named Dr. Wu after the Steely Dan song.
Nice.
I cracked up when I read that because when you hear the word Wu, you mentioned that for you, it's the Steely Dan song.
It's Steely Dan song, yeah. Yeah, dude, absolutely. That's hilarious, man. I love that song.
So I did some research on the meaning of that song, and apparently it's about one of the band members overcoming their heroin addiction. Dr. Wu in the song is supposed to be the drug dealer.
Okay.
And then the woman in the song, I think, is the heroine. And then the other person is the singer himself or something.
I'm curious. I've always been curious about that. So much of Steely Dan always has a lot, and I mean a lot of drug references in them. And I've never been sure if they were ever really into that stuff, because after their first album, it seems like they were really just, there was 2 members, and the rest of the guys came and went when they hired them for their studio work, because these guys were obsessive studio nut jobs. I mean, they would record a guitar solo like 50 or 60 times to get what they wanted out of a player. So I don't see that falling into these, maybe not the 2 guys, maybe some of the other members of the early Dan, but I could see that because the song is very drug reference heavy.
Multiple different articles or conversations alluded
about
to
that.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're probably correct about it. I'm sure they probably are.
Yeah, the interpretation of who the drug dealer is versus who the drugs are, that was kind of up for debate, but everybody seemed to agree that I don't know which of the band members it was talking about it, but it was about their experiences with that.
This was the 70s, man. This was the 70s.
Let's assume that Dr. Wu is the drug dealer.
Is the dealer. That's how I interpret it. If I look at it this way, it is most assuredly, he's somebody. But it's like, are you with me, Dr. Wu? Are you real, or just something that he imagined, or is he real? It could be the dragon. There's reference to chasing the dragon in one of my favorite songs about Babylon sisters and smoking Cocoa Puffs, which are cocaine-laced cigarettes. I mean, it's just all over that stuff. And what's funny, as a kid, I grew up hearing this stuff. This is played on rock and roll radio stations, and this is very chill, but they're different. Steely Dan is really different. Yeah, they got away with saying a bunch of stuff that people kind of knew. It's like, it was such cool sound, and they weren't screaming or nothing like that. They were just real chill. So everyone's like, it must be all right.
I'm going to go off the rails here a little bit. If Kelonved was inspired by Dr. Wu after this song, and Dr. Wu is a drug dealer. I'm getting this image of Tyrone Biggums from the Chappelle Show, the crack addict, and he's, scratching his neck. He's like, "Y'all got any more of that Malazan?" I wonder how Dr. Wu fits into that reference to Kelonved.
Well, if Dr. Wu, we're not sure if he's real or not. So maybe if in their world, Kellenband could have been maybe more of a Deus Ex Machina. And, are they real or not?
Okay.
So maybe that's what it is, something like that.
All right.
If that makes sense in their game, I mean, because he kind of is the Deus Ex Machina here and there. Sometimes need a god to stick their finger in here and stop the game. It's like, wait a minute. Well, you have Shadowthrone stick his face in there.
I wonder if any of them actually role-played him.
That's a good question.
Would have had to have.
You would think so. I'm curious in their world if maybe the DM could have been a character. He's such a good writer. If he was the DM, get out of here, dude. He was Shadowthrone.
I think at any given time they could play 4 or 5 different characters.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume one of them was playing him.
Yeah.
And maybe they'd take turns playing some of them too. I don't know.
Well, maybe they played together as Dancer and Kellenved, and maybe they probably played him through to Shadowthrone and Cotillion. Who knows what they've done?
Yeah.
What these guys have done to build it. It's, Tolkien wrote a whole prehistory. I think Herbert did kind of something somewhat similar to some extent with Dune. I mean, this is their prehistory for their world. I've always assumed kind of is like, well, they got all their lore from their world, from their game plan somehow.
Yeah.
Let us play with you, Mr. Erikson, please. Please.
I don't know if I'd be skilled enough to participate in that. Yeah, I'd have to get card carried probably.
Yeah, be gentle with us.
Though I have led some pretty good sessions that people still talk about to this day. So I might have a little bit of that spark, but I don't know.
That you were a sword master for a moment.
Me?
First sword for a moment.
Oh, that was different. That was first sword. I'm not going to bring that up. My friend.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I have to bring it up. That's what you have me for.
That's a past episode reference where I told that story. You'll have to go back and listen to that. I have no idea where it was, though.
No idea. Early Gardens.
Yeah. Early Gardens of the Moon. Yeah. Okay. All right. Chapter 23, Part 2. We pick up with Kalam and Minala on their approach to Mock's Hold. There was no slowing of pace as they rode toward the foot of wide stone stairs leading up the cliff face. Kalam gripped Minala's arm and said, "You'd better slow." Minala cut him off as she growled, "Just hold tight. They aren't so steep." Kalam thought, "They aren't so steep. Feiners." His thoughts were interrupted as muscles surged beneath them and the stallion plunged forward. Before the beast's hooves struck the stones, however, the world shifted into formless gray. The stallion screamed and reared back, but too late. The warren swallowed them. Hooves skidded wildly beneath them. Kalam was thrown to one side, met a wall, and was scraped off. A polished floor rose up to meet him, knocking the air from his lungs. The crossbow flew from his hands and skittered away. Gasping, he slowly rolled over. They had arrived in a musty hallway, and the stallion was anything but pleased. The ceiling was high and arched, with an arm's reach to spare above the rearing animal. Somehow Minala had stayed in the saddle. She struggled to calm the stallion, and a moment later succeeded, leaning forward to rest one hand lightly just behind its flaring nostrils. I wonder where she got all these horse skills from.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm assuming, maybe she just spent all her time in the stables. I'm assuming they had horses.
Maybe when she was growing up or something?
Well, not even just that, because her husband was an officer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm assuming, officers had access to horses there. So I'm assuming that she's just always been a skilled rider. I mean, I don't know why. I've just always assumed that, just because she's always been presented as, everything she's been presented as has been capable.
She got some advanced horse knowledge here.
Yeah, she does. The way that I understand it, she's getting that thing up to full speed, yanking it to a quick stop, skidding around corners, drifting this dude. I mean, she knows what's what.
With a groan, Kalam climbed to his feet. Minala hissed, "Where are we?" as she stared up and down the long, empty hall. Kalam spoke as he retrieved the crossbow. "If I'm correct, Mock's Hold. The Empress knows we're coming. Seems she's grown impatient." Minala said, "If that's the case, Kalam, we're as good as dead." He was not inclined to disagree, but said nothing. He's following the neutral thinking doctrine.
Agreed. Best way through the bad situation. I think we've both agreed on this.
What day of claw training do you get that on?
That lesson 1, you just work on that. That's the same thing as I will not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is it's like it's day one, man. Oh.
Kalam stepped past the horse and eyed the doors at the far end. He said, I think we're in the old keep. Minala said, that explains the dust. Even so, it smells like a stable. Kalam said, not surprising. Half this building's been converted into just that. The main hall remains, though. He nodded toward the doors and said, through there. Minala asked, no other approaches? Kalam shook his head and said, none surviving. Her back door will be a warren, in any case. Minala grunted and climbed down from the saddle. She asked, do you think she's been watching? Kalam said, magically? Maybe. You're wondering if she knows about you. He hesitated, then handed her the crossbow and said, let's pretend she doesn't. Hold back. I'll lead the stallion through. She nodded and cocked the weapon. Kalam looked at her and said, how in Hood's name did you get here? Minala said, the Imperial transport that left a day after Ragstopper. This horse wasn't out of place among Pormqual's breeders. We, too, were caught in that cursed storm, but the only real trouble came when we had to disembark from the bay. That's a swim I don't want to repeat, ever. Kalam's eyes widened. He said, Hood's breath, woman. He looked away, then back, and asked, why? She bared her teeth and said, can you really be that dense, Kalam? In any case, was I wrong? Yes, men are that dense. Yes. It must be spelled out explicitly.
Absolutely. Listen, if my late wife hadn't kissed me first, I probably would not have been married to her.
Yeah, allegedly, even though I thought I was moving under my own volition, approaching my wife to ask her out, I was being manipulated into being in the position to do so by her.
It's that advanced Bene Gesserit training, buddy. It's like with schemes within schemes within schemes with those laws. It's like, wow. Yeah, we don't stand a chance, man. They're playing, they're playing chess. We're playing checkers, bro.
Dude, I'll tell you what. She's got my mental map down so much. Our cat tree is shredded. So I wanted to get a new scratching post or some type of cat thing for our cat. Mm-hmm. And I was telling her, hey, I saw these cool things the other day and maybe we could get them. She's like, nope, we're not doing it. And I said, you don't even know what I'm saying. She's like, you're going to talk about these things that they put on the walls that the cat can climb up. And I lost it. I was like, how did you know? I was laughing for 5 minutes straight. How did you know? She goes, I just knew.
It's the same way this week. I kid you not. It's bad. I got the cat fever. I went to go buy me some cat food for the outdoor cats I feed. And they had some kitties there, black and whites, and they were really cute. And they were 2 for $1. I'm like,
oh, what a deal.
Yeah, I'm strong though I leave. I'm just like, I'm okay. And so KP gets home and said, man, you're really lucky. It's like, why is that? I said, well, it's pet store day. She says, let me guess. And she says something about the black and white cats. I'm like, how on earth did you know that? Because it's like she doesn't ever go there. But apparently one of her friends from work had been over at the store and said she had got a little black and white kitty from over there. And they told her about the 2 for $1 deal. And that was so funny. She sank my battleship so quick. It was too funny, man. I was like, well, I was blown away by that, dude. It's great. Absolutely great.
It's sad when they have you so mapped out so easily.
Oh, my word.
So predictable.
Oh, my word. Oh, yeah.
There were some barriers Kalam had never expected to be breached. Their swift crumble left him breathless. After a moment, he said, all right, but I'll have you know, I'm anything but subtle. Her brows arched and she said, you could have fooled me. Kalam faced the doors again. He was armed with a single knife and had lost too much blood. He thought, hardly what you'd call properly equipped to assassinate an empress, but it will have to do. Without another word to Minala, he slipped forward, gathering the stallion's reins. The animal's hooves clopped loudly as they approached the old double doors. He laid a hand against the wood. The dark-stained planks were sweating. He thought, there's sorcery on the other side, powerful sorcery. He stepped back, met Minala's eyes where she stood 10 paces back, and slowly shook his head. She shrugged, lifting the crossbow in her hands. He faced the doors again and gripped the latch of the one to his left. It lifted silently. Kalam pushed the door open. Inky darkness flowed out, bitter cold. That's interesting. Are you picking up the Warren of Darkness here?
Yes, I do, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay, cool. A woman's voice said, step within, Kalam Mikar. He saw little option. He had come for this, though the final shaping was not as he would have liked. Kalam strode into the dark, the stallion following. Lysine said, "That is close enough. Unlike Topper and his claw, I do not underestimate you." Kalam could see nothing, and the voice seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. The door behind him, slightly ajar, offered a slight lessening of the gloom, but that reached but a pace or two before the blackness absorbed it entirely. In a cool voice, Lysine said, "You've come to kill me, bridge burner. All this way. Why?" The question startled him. There was wry amusement in her voice as she continued. "I cannot believe that you must struggle to find your answer, Kalam." Kalam growled, "The deliberate murder of the bridge burners, the outlawing of Dujek One Arm, the attempted murders of Whiskey Jack, myself, and the rest of the Ninth Squad, old disappearances, a possible hand in Dasim Ultor's death,
Dasim Ultor.
the assassination of Dancer and the Emperor, incompetence, ignorance, betrayal." He let his litany fall away. Lysine was silent for a long time. Then she said in a low tone, "And you are to be my judge and executioner." Kalam said, "That's about right." That's pretty ballsy.
Oh, my word. I love this old boy. I love this man. For that answer right there, it's just like, yep. Yep, that's about it.
Lysine said, "Am I permitted a defense?" He bared his teeth. The voice was coming from everywhere. Everywhere but one place, he now realized. The corner off to his left. A corner that he estimated was no more than 4 strides away. He said, "You can try, Empress." He thought, "Hood's breath. I can barely stand upright. And she's most likely got wards. As Quick Ben says, when you got nothing, bluff." Lysine's tone hardened. She said, "High Mage Tashren's efforts in Genebakis were misguided. The decimation of the bridge burners was not a part of my intentions. Within your squad was a young woman, possessed by a god that sought to kill me. Adjunct Lorne was sent to deal with her." Kalam said, "I know about that, Empress. You're wasting time." Lysine said, "I do not see it as a waste, given that time may be all I shall enjoy here in the mortal realm. Now, to continue answering your charges. The outlawing of Dujek is a temporary measure, a ruse, in fact. We perceive the threat that was the Panyan Daman. Dujek, however, was of the opinion that he could not deal with it on his own. We needed to fashion allies of enemies, Kalam. We needed Darujistan's resources. We needed Caladan Brood and his Rivi and Bargast. We needed Animander Rake and his Tistandi. And we needed the Crimson Guard off our backs. Now, none of those formidable forces are strangers to pragmatism. One and all, they could see the threat represented by the Panyan Seer and his rising empire. But the question of trust remained problematic. I agreed to Dujek's plan to cut him and his host loose. As outlaws, they are, in effect, distanced from the Malazan Empire and its desires. Our answer, if you will, to the issue of trust. Kalam's eyes narrowed in thought. He asked, "And who knows of this ruse?" Lysine said, "Only Dujek and Tashren." So it was Dujek who thought up the outlawing,
Wow.
which is an understandable choice, but imagine the toll the Malazan Empire is paying with the soldiers in the army turning against them. Do you think they could ever be brought back into the fold after something like this?
Well, they obviously think so, and I think so too, because the one thing here is that she just brought up, the fact that they're planning this for the Pan and Doman who's coming, and they're such a big threat that they're going to be able to basically marshal all these other powerful forces together as a fighting, or at least to band together. That would make people kind of quickly forget. I mean, in certain cases about that, because it's like, you know what, we ain't got time to worry about this right now. I'll get back to this with y'all later after we deal with this. Kind of deal.
It might be as simple as Dujek, after the fact, tells them, "Hey, this is all because of X reason." And so maybe they would realize, oh, okay, we were still working for the Malazan Empire after all.
And real quick here, have you ever seen the movie Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman?
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Yes, but that section about when he was telling Kalam to bluff when in doubt, when you got nothing, bluff. That's kind of like there's the scene where he beats him. Why he becomes the favorite of George Kennedy's because he beats the guy with a handful of nothing, bluffs him with nothing, raises on everything. And so I'm just curious if it's got to be. It may not be, but it's like it could be. It could be. This is questions for the man.
Okay.
That's too funny that I love, thank you for saying that.
What a memorable line. And of course, it's embedded in my mind because of Civil War by Guns N' Roses.
Oh, right.
That's how the song starts.
Yeah, I remember that. That's so funny. Oh, great stuff. Great stuff.
It's been a while since I listened to that song. I need to listen to that.
I need to watch the movie. It's probably been 20 years since I've seen it.
I was watching Road to Perdition the other day.
Uh-huh.
That's one of his last movies, Paul Newman.
Oh, yeah.
What a great movie, man.
It is.
That's one of my favorite movies. It's so good.
I've only seen it once or twice. I like it. I've always liked it. I don't know why I haven't watched it more.
I never hear anybody talking about it when we talk about mob movies.
Yeah.
You always hear about the Italian mob and stuff, or The Departed, that comes up too. I don't know. I wish there'd be more people that see that. It's a really good movie.
Well, it's funny. It's brought up quite a bit in other circles. I don't know if you know this. It's brought up in the graphic novel circles.
Because it was a graphic novel.
Yeah, it's brought up quite a bit in those circles. But that's it, because I keep my ear to the ground. I'm a comic nerd. What do you want?
Mm-hmm. After a moment, Kalam grunted. And what of the High Mage? What's his role in all this? He heard the smile as Lasine said, "Ah, well, he remains in the background, out of sight. But therefore Dujek should one arm need him. Taishren is Dujek's, how do you soldiers say it? His shaved knuckle in the hole." Kalam was silent for a long minute. The only sounds in the chamber were his breathing and the slow but steady drip of his blood onto the flagstones. Then he said, "There are older crimes that remain." Kalam frowned. He thought, the only sounds. I'll come back to this in a bit.
Copy that.
In answer to the mention of older crimes, Lasine said, "Assassinating Kelanved and Dancer? Aye. I ended their rule of the Malazan Empire, usurped the throne. A most vicious betrayal, in truth. An empire is greater than any lone mortal." Kalam said, "Including you." Lasine said, "Including me. An empire enforces its own necessities, makes demands in the name of duty, and that particular burden is something you, as a soldier, must most certainly understand. I knew those two men very well, Kalam, a claim you cannot make. I answered a necessity I could not avoid, with reluctance, with anguish. Since that time, I have made grievous errors in judgment, and I must live with those." Kalam said, "Dassam Ultor."
Dassam Ultor.
Lasine interrupted. "Was a rival, an ambitious man, sworn to Hood. I would not risk civil war, so I struck first. I averted that civil war, and so have no regrets on that." Lasine took him out?
Wow. Just wow, with like 3 exclamation points of wow. I mean, I'm kind of blown away by that. I've completely forgotten this along the line, apparently.
Yeah.
Completely. Just completely.
In a dry tone, Kalam said, "It seems you've prepared for this." He thought, "Oh, haven't you just?" After a moment, she went on. "So, if Dassam Ultor was sitting here right now..."
I think it's the last, isn't it? I'll stop. Sorry.
"So if Dassam Ultor was sitting here right now, instead of me..." "Tell me, Kalam, do you think he would have let you get this close? Do you think he would have sought to reason with you?" She was silent for a few more breaths, then continued. "It seems clear that my efforts to disguise the direction of my voice have failed, for you face me directly. 3, perhaps 4 strides, Kalam, and you can end the reign of Empress Lasine. What do you choose?" Kalam smiled and shifted the grip of the knife in his right hand. He thought, "Very well, I'll play along." He said, 7 cities. Lasine snapped, "Will be answered in kind." Despite himself, Kalam's eyes widened at the anger he heard there. He thought, well, what do you know? Empress, you did not need your illusions after all. Thus the hunt ends here. He sheathed the knife and smiled in admiration when she gasped. He rumbled, "Empress." Lasine said, I admit to some confusion." Kalam thought, "I'd not thought acting one of your fortes, Lasine." He said, "You could have begged for your life. You could have given more reasons, made more justifications. Instead, you spoke, not with your voice, but with an empire's." He turned away and said, "Your hiding place is safe. I will leave your presence." Lasine said, "Wait." Kalam paused, brows raised at the sudden uncertainty in her voice. He said, "Empress?" Lasine said, "The claw. I can do nothing. I cannot recall them." Kalam said, "I know. They deal with their own." Lasine asked, "Where will you go?" He smiled in the darkness and said, "Your confidence in me is flattering, Empress." He swung the stallion around, strode to the doorway, then turned back one last time and said, "If you meant to ask, will I come for you again? The answer is no. After all he went through to get here, She managed to convince him to see things from her point of view at the last minute. She must really value him to go through all of this instead of outright killing him.
I agree. And this also says something from her point of view that she views him as a very important person. I kind of like to update my personal image of Kamraun here real quick. I remember I said last week Mike Tyson. I agree. It's like a 6'4" Mike Tyson meets Barry Sanders. Even though Barry's real short, but Barry was a heck of a runner. And he's got those crazy running moves with the fighting ability of Mike Tyson. That's a horrifying combination. So, but I don't think we need to say any more on that. Let's move along.
Your mention of Mike Tyson, I saw a clip of him playing with his pet tiger.
Yeah.
When he used to have one.
Yeah.
Man, that was a big cat. It was a white tiger.
Yeah.
He's just tussling with it. And I was like, man, this guy's crazy. Because, you know, cats get a little wild once in a while.
They do.
But it was funny how kitten-like it was with the way it was playing.
I love how the big cats behave just like our house cats. They're the same thing. Just size and location. What trips me out is the strength of those things, man. It's, even down to think how strong your house cat is.
Yeah.
They're ridiculously strong for their size. They have a ridiculous strength to them. Think about how when they do those freak out jumps, when they jump about 10 foot straight up, you know, how? I mean, it's like, how do you flex? It's like they flex something. It's like, boop, and it's just like, it's just up there all of a sudden. You're like, whoa.
It's not all cats, though, because you got those derpy ones that they try and jump 2 feet and they fall straight down.
Absolutely.
So this interaction between Laseen and Kalam also paints a different picture of her than that with which we've been presented thus far.
Yeah. And think about this. We have to go back. We have seen Laseen twice, correct? In Gardens of the Moon. She's not by Laseen at that point, but she was known by her, I forget what her
Surly.
Surly. We meet her as Surly at the very beginning, and then we meet her through Perrin as he enters the throne room on his horse through the warren. And she's actually kind of good-natured about the whole thing. And so our only glimpse of her is that she's not vindictive or anything. I mean, she was actually amazingly composed over the whole scenario. Everything else we've had has come from the prejudiced viewpoint, and rightfully so, of having lost 9/10 3/4 of the bridge burners. And so, I mean, if they've earned this negative, but our personal introductions to her have not seen her, you know, she's actually been somewhat very composed individual, and not what I think of her when I think of her from the soldier's point of view, where they're mad and angry, and rightfully so, at this murderess, which she's not. It's all part of this plan.
What do you think the bone phone call went like with Tayshrin after she found out that 9 3/4 out of 10 of the bridge burners were killed?
I don't think that was a very good conversation for Tayshrin. I think he's probably kind of puckered up over that one, wouldn't you think?
Man.
She's an intimidating thing. I mean, but she's always...
Well, but he's also a high mage. I mean, come on.
He is a high mage. You know what? She's kind of like Thrawn more than Vader, correct? I mean, that's what I get. Not saying that Kellen Ved was not Thrawn-like as well.
I don't know if that's accurate, because Thrawn, he's not very athletic. He's all completely mind. And Laseen is a combination. She's very cunning, but she's also very formidable in her own right.
Yes, she's the founder of the Claw. Good gracious. I mean, you don't get to be that way without being something impressive.
Minala was covering the entrance from a few paces away. She slowly straightened as Kalam stepped into the hallway. The crossbow held steady as he pulled the stallion into view, then went around and shut the door. She hissed, "Well?" He said, "Well, what?" She said, "I heard voices, murmuring, garbled. Is she dead? Did you kill the Empress?" Kalam thought, "I killed a ghost, perhaps. No, a scarecrow I made in Laseen's guise. An assassin should never see the face behind the victim's mask." And to my earlier point about this being a side of Laseen we haven't seen before, humanizing someone that you villainize tends to have this effect.
Yeah, and especially if you are a professional killer, we can't have those little pesky feelings in there, hindering you from making the killing decisions.
Kalam said, "Not but mocking echoes in that chamber. We're done here, Minala." Minala's eyes flashed. She said, "After all this, mocking echoes? You've crossed 3 continents to do this?" She must think he's insane at this point.
Yeah, but she digs him.
She's willing to put up with a lot.
Yeah.
He shrugged and said, It's our nature, isn't it? Again and again, we cling to the foolish belief that simple solutions exist. I anticipated a dramatic, satisfying confrontation, the flash of sorcery, the spray of blood. I wanted a sworn enemy dead by my hand. Instead, he rumbled a laugh and continued. I had an audience with a mortal woman, more or less. He shook himself, then said, in any case, we've the claw's gauntlet ahead of us. Minala said, terrific. What do we do now, then? He grinned and said, simple, straight down their hood-damned throat. Minala said, a foolish belief if I've ever heard one. Kalam said, aye, come on. Leading the stallion, they went down the hallway.
I have to ask, how do you get the horse out of here?
Yeah, good question.
It's like, how are they going to get the horse out? We spent the past 6 hours looking for an exit to get this horse out of the way.
Minala will find a way.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, if anything, they'll jump off the wall.
Yeah, into the bay.
I'm getting a picture of some movie where somebody rode a horse into the water off some what was that?
Baron Munchausen.
In
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Okay.
It's a Terry Gilliam movie. I'm sorry.
Okay. I must be thinking of something else.
He goes into the water at one point, and then he picks himself out of the water by picking himself up by his own hair.
Okay.
If you've not seen that, that's a magnificent Terry Gilliam masterful.
I have not seen that one.
It's a weird. It's kind of an introduction to Uma. It's a really early Uma Thurman. She's nobody in it. It's a bizarre take on it. It's a German movie actually that he's remade. I don't know if the original one was on Turner Classics once, but Terry Gilliam's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is a magnificent fantasy and told against the age of reason. You got to watch it, dude. He hangs out with the fastest guy in the world, the strongest guy in the world, the guy that can hear the best, and the guy that can see the best. That's the best sharpshooter in the world. So it's like a weird, like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, about 200 years before the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Okay, sounds very odd.
It is. It's extremely odd.
The unnatural darkness slowly dissipated in the old main hall. Revealed in one corner was a chair on which was seated a withered corpse. Wisps of hair fluttered lightly in a faint draft. The lips were peeled back, the eye sockets two depthless voids. A warren opened near the back wall, and a tall, lean man draped in a dark green cloak stepped through. He paused in the center of the chamber, cocked his head toward the double doors opposite, then turned to the corpse on the chair and said, well? Empress Lacine's voice emerged from those lifeless lips. No longer a threat. The man said, are you sure, Empress? Lacine said, at some point in our conversation, Kalam realized that I was not here in the flesh, that he would have to resume his hunt. It seemed, however, that my words had an effect. He is not an unreasonable man, after all. Now, if you would kindly call off your hunters. So I said I wanted to come back to this. Mm-hmm. Kalam figured it out when he realized he couldn't hear her breathing. The only thing he was hearing was his own breathing and the blood dripping on the ground.
Yeah, just absolutely amazing work from him. I'll come back to my point in a minute.
Okay. The man said, we have been over this. You know that is impossible. Lacine said, I would not lose him, Topper. His bark was a laugh. He said I cannot call off my hunters, Empress. Do you take that to mean you actually expect them to succeed? Hood's breath. Dancer himself would have hesitated before taking on Kalam Makar.
Wow.
No, better to view this disastrous night as a long overdue winnowing of the Brotherhood's weaker elements. Amazing. Even Topper is acknowledging Kalam's superiority to that of the Claw members.
Yeah, dude. And think about that. That comment there about saying that even Dancer might have hesitated before taking on Kalam. That's a heck of a statement right there.
It is.
And we don't even know anything about Dancer. We just assumed through the whispers in the crowd he ran with. It's like the Titans, you know? It's like if these guys are awesome, their parents must have been amazing. And it's kind of what you got here. It's like these Titans of what Kellenvad and Dancer were in a weird way with that old guard. But back to that, we mentioned darkness earlier. Wondering if it might be darkness. I think it was because Topper is half Tistandi.
I hadn't put those two things together until you mentioned that.
That's kind of what my thinking of why it was probably dark. These are elements we all know to be fact at this point. This is no secret. I'm not spoiling anything, so I'm not, am I?
Was Topper or Pearl to have Tistandi? Or both of them?
Is it Topper that was running errands for parents?
It was.
Or was that Pearl?
It was Topper.
So Topper's the Tistandi.
Really?
Yeah, because it's mentioned in his description.
Okay.
When we first meet him, that he's real tall, and he even mentions his own lineage when he's talking with Perrin.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. I believe that's how it's acknowledged, but it's brought up. It's brought up in early gardens, and I'm guessing if a lot of the claws seem to be some magic users to some
Yeah, you're right.
or better or lesser extent. So
I am he, alas. The blood of a Tistandi races in my veins. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So there we go.
Is Pearl also half Tistandi?
For some reason, I think so. I think sometimes, for some reason, I was mistaken Topper and Pearl.
Yeah, I always get them confused as well.
I get them confused, and I've been thinking that Topper is Pearl. It's not. Pearl is Salky Land.
Correct.
So I think that's why I kind of mix them up. I'm like, wait, is Topper Pearl? It's like, no, Pearl is somebody. Pearl is Salky Land. I think that's what it is right there. I think he's half Tist.
I think he is.
I've got it pulled up right here. 1/4.
Okay.
So he's also.
Yep. All right.
Okay, there we go. Both these fellas are linked with the Tist.
Yeah. Lacine said, generous of you indeed. His smile was wry. He said, we have learned lessons in killing this night, Empress. Much to ponder. Besides, I have a victim on which to vent my frustration. Lacine said, Pearl, your favored lieutenant. Topper said, favored no longer. A hint of warning entered Lacine's tone as she said, I trust he will recover from your attentions, Topper. Topper sighed, aye, but for the moment I will leave him to sweat and consider Kalam's most pointed lesson. A certain measure of humility does a man good, I always say. Would you not agree, Empress? Empress? Topper thought, I have been talking to a corpse. Ah, Lacine, that is what I love most about you, your extraordinary ability to make one eat one's own words. Do you think Pearl is getting in trouble because he didn't simply kill Kalam and drop him over the side of the ship?
Yeah, I mean, that could very well be, because if he would have done what he should have, I mean, I thought he was there to kill Kalam, but he must not have been. He must not have ever been out to kill Kalam, or at least not directly. Think about it. I mean, why would he have gone to all this ruse? I mean, was it all just to find out if he was going for Lacine?
I don't know. I'm not sure what he was doing on that vessel, whether it was to make sure that gold made it all the way across for Lacine, the treasury, or if it was Kalam specifically that he was going after, or if it was just a confluence.
It could be a confluence. I never thought about it like as him safeguarding that treasure for Lacine, because she speaks up for him here. She says, I trust that you're basically won't kill him.
Right.
And basically saying, don't kill him. I was curious if Pearl was doing what he did, just wounding him just for a chance to pit himself against Kalam.
I don't think he directly wanted to be involved. I think he just wanted the other people to
take him out.
Yeah, take him out, weaken him to the point where they would at least have a chance of taking him out.
Okay.
But what I was thinking here is that would be kind of counter to what Lacine is saying here, saying that she values Kalam. But I guess the claw is kind of its own thing. Maybe Topper is upset with Pearl because he lost 80 to 100 claw tonight on this fiasco in Malice City when they didn't have to. Granted, it was some of the weaker elements, so giving them a bad name.
And the ship with the gold is also sinking in the bay.
Also his fault.
Well, kind of. I mean,
he unleashed the Imperial Demon.
That's probably what it is. He sank the treasury that we smuggled out. That could be what it's all about right there. It's money. He's lost the money. It's like, dammit, you lost the money. It's like, and you lost the money.
They got mages. They can dredge it up. They can do stuff.
But they got to go out of their way to do it now.
Yeah.
Instead of having it unloading at the dock right now. It's out in the bay. Yeah, it's in the bay. At least it's closer. Now, real quick here. This has always been a core memory for me in a weird way. Not the talk itself. It's the putting it together after the fact. That Kalam was in there talking with the corpse.
Exactly.
That he sussed it out. And it kind of is like, it's the piecing of it all together and the reveal of Dasamultor's death or by Lacine. All that stuff is like, this makes it core. And using that corpse like a ventriloquist dummy. It's like, dude, that's gnarly. That's weird.
For me, it is the speaking with the dummy, but then Lacine managing to convince him to see her side of the picture.
Yeah. Very important. It's a very important thing here. And you realize that we're not alone in a weird way. I think that's kind of what it is that we know that our soldiers that we love are not necessarily on their own like we thought. They've got some support coming.
Yeah. The captain of the guard literally stumbled on Kalam and Minala as they edged their way alongside the old keep's outer wall. Minala raised the crossbow and the man cautiously held his hands out to the sides. Kalam stepped forward and dragged him into the shadows, then quickly disarmed him. Kalam hissed, all right, Captain, tell me where the hold's unwelcome guests are hiding. The man sighed and said, I take it you don't mean yourselves. Well, the gatehouse guard's been muttering about figures on the stairs. Of course, the old bastard's half blind. But in the grounds here, nothing. Kalam said, you can do better than that, Captain. The man scowled and said, Aragan. And here I am only days away from a new posting. Kalam said, and that doesn't have to change with a little cooperation. Aragan said, I've just done the rounds. Everything's quiet, as far as I can tell. Mind you, that doesn't mean a thing, does it? Minala glanced pointedly up at the pennant flapping from the weather vane above the hold. She said, and your official guest? No bodyguards? Captain Aragan grinned and said, oh, the Empress, you mean? Something in his tone hinted at great amusement. He asked, she's not aged well, has she? So I guess he was in on the
ruse. Yeah, apparently so.
Inky blackness billowed in the courtyard. Minala shouted a warning even as the crossbow bucked in her hands. A voice shouted in pain. Kalam straight-armed the captain, sending him sprawling to one side, then spun, knife flashing in his hand. 4 hands of the claw had appeared. 20 killers were converging on them. Throwing stars hissed through the darkness. Minala cried out, the crossbow flying from her grip as she staggered back. A bucking wave of sorcery rolled over the cobbles and vanished. Shadows swirled in the mists of the hands, adding to the confusion. When something huge and ungainly stepped into view, Kalam's eyes widened with recognition. He thought, apt.
Yes.
The demon lashed out. Bodies flew in all directions. The hand most distant turned as one to meet this new threat. A rock-sized object flew toward them. The 5 hunters scattered, but too late, as the sharper struck the flagstones. The explosion sent shards of iron scything through them. It's amazing how effective the Moranth munitions are. All the skills in the world can't help you dance around that shrapnel.
Well, let's look at this here real quick. The Moranth have, for all intents and purposes, invented the fragmentation grenade in a world of bows, arrows, and swords.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't attempted to take over the continent or the world or something like that.
Well, the Malazans are definitely using it to that effect.
Yes, they are.
That was a big force multiplier for them.
Oh, man. That with the Air Force with the Moranth.
The logistics.
Airdrop, yeah. Turning over the logistics to the Moranth was a brilliant scheme.
A lone hunter closed with Kalam. 2 thin-bladed knives darted forward in a blur. One struck Kalam in his right shoulder. The other missed his face by inches. Kalam's knife fell from nerveless fingers and he reeled back. The hunter leapt at him. The sack of cloth tacks intercepted the path of the man's head with a sickening crunch. The hunter dropped to writhe on the ground. I was waiting for that sack of cloth tacks to make its appearance, and it finally happened. Oh. It's like a poor man's morning star.
Is that the equivalent in our world of sticking a sock full of master locks?
Basically. That's a horrifying thought, man. Oh,
that is, man. That's awful.
The master locks, they're very blunt and heavy, but the nails, I feel like there's be sharp points and edges, and it'd just be nasty.
Yeah, that's a bad one. Especially you got about 5 or 10 pounds of them in there. It's like, it's gonna really mess you up, dude.
Another sharper detonated nearby. More screams rang through the courtyard. Hands gripped Kalam's tattered apron, dragged him into the shadows. Kalam weakly struggled. He said, Minala. A familiar voice whispered close to him. We've got her, and Crocus has the stallion. Kalam blinked. He said, sorry? Apsalar said, it's Apsalar these days, Corporal. The shadows closed on all sides. Sounds faded. Apsalar noted, you're full of holes. Busy night, I take it. Kalam grunted as the knife was slowly withdrawn from his shoulder, and he felt the blood welling in the blade's wake. A face leaned into his view, a gray-streaked red snarl of beard, a battered soldier's visage that now grinned. Kalam muttered, Hood's breath. That's a damned ugly face you've got there, Fid. The grin broadened. Fiddler said, funny. I was just thinking the same. And that's what I don't get. What with you finding this flash lady for company? Love these reunions.
Oh, dude, they're so awesome, dude. So magnificent.
Kalam said, her wounds? Apsalar interrupted, minor. Fiddler asked, did you get her? Did you kill the Empress? Kalam said, no, I changed my mind. Fiddler said, damn, we could. You what? Kalam said, she's a sweet sack of bones after all, Fid. Remind me to tell you the whole tale sometime, provided you repay in kind, since I gather you managed to use the Azath Gates. Fiddler said, aye, we did. Kalam asked, any problems? Fiddler said, nothing to it. No bloodfly or Denrabi divers to speak of, huh?
Well, technically, not inside the Azath.
Yeah, true.
They didn't have problems inside there. It was all the getting to the Azath. That was the rough part of the journey there.
Kalam said, "Glad to hear one of us had it easy." He struggled to sit up and asked, "Where are we?" A new voice spoke, sibilant and wry. "The realm of shadow, my realm." Fiddler groaned, looked up. He said, "Shadow Throne is it now? Ved, more like it. We ain't fooled, you got that? You can hide in those fancy shadows all you like, but you're still just a damned emperor."
Wow.
He's having none of it.
I appreciate the fact that Finn is talking so much trash to this powerful entity.
Yeah. This interaction right here is really interesting to me.
It is.
Shadow Throne said, I quail." He giggled suddenly, edging back, and said, "And you, are you not a soldier of the Malazan Empire? Did you not take a vow? Did you not swear allegiance to me?" Fiddler said, "To the Empire, you mean." Shadow Throne said, "Why quibble about such minor distinctions? The truth remains that the Aptorian has delivered you to me, to me, to me." Sudden clicking, buzzing sounds made Shadow Throne shift around to face the demon. When the strange noises coming from Apt ceased, Shadow Throne faced the group once again. He said, "Clever bitch. But we knew that, didn't we? She and that ugly child riding her. Ah! Corporal Kalam of the Bridge Burners. It seems you found a woman. Oh, look at her eyes. Such fury. I am impressed, most impressed. And now you wish to settle down, yes? I wish to reward you all." He gestured with both hands as if delivering blessings. He continued, "Loyal subjects that you all are." Apslar spoke in her cool, detached way. "I do not seek any reward, nor does my father. We would have our association severed, with you, with Cotillion, and with every other ascendant. We would leave this war in Ammonus, and return to the Canese coast." Crocus said, "And I with them." Shadow Throne crooned, "Oh, wonderful! Synchronous elegance, this fullest of full circles. To the Canese coast indeed, to the very road where we first met. Oh yes, go then. I send you with the smoothest of gestures. Go." He raised an arm and caressed the air with his long, ghostly fingers. Shadows swept over the three figures, and when they cleared, Apsalar, her father, and Crocus had vanished. Wow, not even a chance to say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, no tearful goodbyes here.
It's very abrupt.
It is. It's so funny how much that Pust is like Shadow Throne. I think we've asked this question before. Does this Warren invite madness? I'm guessing it does.
Dancer seems to be okay.
He is. That seems to be fine.
But everybody else...
It's Shadow itself. I'm curious, yeah.
I was thinking about this. I don't want to get too derailed, and you may need to think about this and come back.
Okay.
If you were in this world and you had to align yourself with one of these Warrens / deities, who would you think you'd end up in alignment with?
We don't know enough about everybody. And there's apparently an infinite number of things out there, but out of what we know, you'd almost think Shadow. Shadow is the most non-treacherous, should I say? Not as hostile. It is treacherous, but it's not as outright hostile as some of the other Warrens. But the problem is that you do have a problem with like things like the Shadow Hounds and other things like this. So I don't know. They're all not very nice. So I don't know who I'd align myself with. This isn't like what's bad is they're not like the D&D rule set or the Michael Moorcock rule set where it's all law or evil. Or, you got law versus chaos or the balance. It's kind of like these are like a bunch of fine-tuned. You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of fine-tuned stuff here. I'm not sure what we're dealing with. I'm not sure who I'd want to deal with. I'm not sure.
You know what? I see you. We haven't been introduced to this yet, but the Tiger of Summer.
Oh yeah, that's true. I always like those fellas.
You're
like
a cat guy.
Yeah, I think we talked about this Trake or those fellas. Yeah. Not Ascendants. What are they? They're first heroes.
Yeah, first heroes.
First heroes.
I think Drake's their first hero. Yeah.
Yeah, they're different, but they're kind of Ascendants almost, or they're close up on it.
Yeah, they're Ascendants. They just don't have a
Warren.
Warren, I guess. Yeah.
It's almost like in a weird way with Michael Moorcock. You always had like kings and queens, like a very old school English, almost monarchy type system for those realms. So we seem to run into that here. And we'll start getting more into this as they talk more about the deck of dragons and other people. You do have people that work specifically for different groups, like sworn to certain people. We know that Dassam Ultor was sworn to Hood. We know, that obviously Iskarl is sworn to Shadow. So people swear to things. And we also, what was it? Hebrick was sworn to Fainter.
Mm-hmm.
Feiners also, I think I can understand why that was a popular one. Those were always, they say those kind of, the ones that are popular would be if we were soldiers, we would go with one of the war cults, one of the war gods, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'd probably go to Feiner. More than likely.
Yeah, I was going to say the Beast Throne, you'd probably fit right in with some type of alignment there.
Yeah.
Shadow Throne giggled again and said, Cotillion will be so pleased, won't he just? Now, what of you, soldier? My magnanimity is rarely seen. I have so little of it. Quickly, before I tire of all this amusement. This whole scene where he's handing out these gifts, I'm getting flashes of the end of the movie Sneakers, where they've just finished their job and they have something that the government wants, and James Earl Jones is there, and he's asking everybody what they want so that they'll give him the information that they have that they're supposed to keep secret. It's a great movie, by the way.
Okay.
You should.
I'll check it out because I still haven't seen that. I just got around to watching Sicario, so give me a break, man. Give me another decade, I might get around. I might get around to it then.
It's a really enjoyable movie. It's got some good actors in it. Yeah.
Is that Robert Redford?
Robert Redford, Dan Aykroyd, Sidney Poitier, River Phoenix is in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why haven't I seen this movie? I know it's spy-ish.
James Earl Jones is in it. It's got Ben Kingsley in it.
Get out of here.
A lot of people. Yeah, it's good. Great soundtrack. Yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Okay.
Fiddler crouched beside Kalam and said, Corporal, Kalam, I ain't too thrilled with a god making offers, if you know what I mean. Kalam said, well, we haven't heard much of those offers yet, have we? Kel, Shadow Throne, I could do with the rest, if that's what you've in mind. He glanced across and met Minala's eyes. She nodded. Kalam said, someplace safe. Kelanved said, safe? Nowhere safer. App shall be at your side, as vigilant as ever. And comfort, oh yes, much comfort. Fiddler said, ugh, sounds dull as death. Count me out. Kelanved seemed to cock his head. He said, in truth, I owe you nothing, sapper. Only Apt speaks for you. Alas, she's acquired a certain leverage. And oh, yes, you are a loyal enough soldier, I suppose. You wish to return to the bridge burners? Fiddler said, no. Kalam turned in surprise to see his friend frowning. Fiddler explained, on our way up to Moxhold, we listened in on a group of guards during a shift change. Seems there's a last detachment of recruits holed up in Malaz Harbor on their way to join Tavora. He met Kalam's eyes and said, sorry, Corporal, but I'm for getting involved in putting down that rebellion in your homeland, so I'll enlist. Again.
Wow.
Kalam reached out a blood-smeared hand. He said, just stay alive then. That's all I ask. Fiddler nodded. Shadow Throne sighed. And with such soldiers, it is no wonder we conquered half a world. No, Fiddler, I do not mock. This once, I do not mock. Though Lacine does not deserve such as you. Nevertheless, when these mists clear, you will find yourself in the alley back of Smiley's Tavern. Fiddler said, that will do me fine, Kelanved. I appreciate it. A moment later, Fiddler was gone. Man, for Shadow Throne to recognize the value of Fiddler's loyalty to the Empire is really revealing to me. You would think someone at that level would just look at soldiers as pawns to be sacrificed on the board.
He really is proud of them sappers. It's very weird. I love that. You know?
Do you think his sappers? Remember, the Bridge Burners were his favored unit.
Yeah, they're his favorite unit, but all the soldiers are apparently, a lot of them are pretty loyal because Kelanved knew how to be a good emperor, apparently, or for the soldiers' sake, at least. He knew how to treat the soldiers to keep them loyal, which is a very important thing. If you want to, so he did something right with them. And, when look at his old guard, what we learned about them, and especially what we will learn later on, they're such amazing people. And so he attracted amazing people to him. So it's just kind of one of these things, and they attract, it's likewise, they attract good people under them. And so it's just kind of, it goes downhill. They're very loyal to the Empire. And I love the idea that they're so loyal to the Empire. And even Kalam, he says basically, when she said that she's disposable too, as far as Empire is concerned, that's what sold him.
That and her wanting to set things straight in 7 cities.
Yeah, that too.
Kalam turned a jaded eye on Shadow Throne. He said, you understand, don't you, that I won't try to kill Lacine. My hunt's over. In fact, I'm tempted to warn you and Cotillion off her. Leave the Empire to the Empress. You've got your own, right here. Shadow Throne said, tempted to warn us, you said? The god swept closer and said, bite it back, Kalam, lest you come to regret it. The shadow-wrapped form withdrew again and said, we do as we please. Never forget that, mortal. Kalam is treading a fine line here.
Yeah, he got bad idea from watching Fid lip off to him, so
yes.
He thought he could get away with it too, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's like if one kid pops off to the parents and
Yeah, exactly.
So the other kids see it's okay. The rest of them are going to be like, all right, we can push the boundaries a little bit here.
Yeah, and look what it got him.
Yeah.
Got him a warning.
Minala edged to Kalam's side and laid a trembling hand on his uninjured shoulder. She whispered, "Gifts from gods make me nervous, especially this one." Kalam nodded in full agreement. "Yes, agreed. The gifts always come with strings."
Yeah, strings with hooks.
Yeah. Shadowthrone said, "Oh, don't be like that. My offer stands. Sanctuary, a true opportunity to settle down. Husband and wife. Hee hee. No, mother and father. And best of all, there's no need to wait for children of your own. Apt has found some for you." The mists surrounding them suddenly cleared, and they saw, beyond Apt and her charge, a ragtag encampment sprawled over the summit of a low hill. Small figures wandered among the tent rows. Wood smoke rose from countless fires. Shadowthrone hissed in glee. "You wished for their lives, or so Apt claims. Now you have them. Your children await you, Kalam Mikar and Minala Eltrobe. All 1,300 of them. Beware of gods bearing gifts. 1,300 children."
Wow. That's a lot of kids.
And thus the chapter ends.
Wow. That's a heck of a chapter.
What a great end to the chapter.
Yeah. As we always get to the end of his books and all the big powerhouses start coming out, it's always great stuff, man. You get the reunions and the partings and all that other stuff. We had reunions, partings, 1,300 children brought back from the dead as far as Kalam's concerned. I mean, dude.
It was just such an abrupt way to separate that group.
Yeah.
They didn't even get to say goodbye to each other.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But again, I could see why Shadowthrone did it that way. Don't drag it out. Don't make it some crazy thing. So
get out of here.
Yeah.
I got work to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm busy.
For standout moments, Lasine teleporting Kalam to her for an audience. That was a surprise.
Yes, it was. I loved it. Great stuff.
Finding out that it was Dujek's idea to go outlaw to set aside the issue of trust for the newly found allies on Genabakis.
That is amazing as well. I'm left agape going, wow, you guys are, wow. I'm blown away by this reveal here. Good stuff here.
Yeah, it's a pretty strategic way to look at the situation.
Yeah.
Finding out that Lasine took out Dasim Ultor. Seriously?
Dude, I still can't wrap my head around that. I can't believe I've completely forgotten that nugget as much as I love the name Dasim Ultor. And it's like, that's such an important name to find out. I'm impressed with her. Don't get me wrong. But it's like that she's responsible for that. It's like, well, I mean, I can see that she did the plan, but do you think she had physical hand involved with that? Or was that taken care of over there in Seven Cities?
It was taken care of in Seven Cities.
Okay.
She probably facilitated his downfall in some way.
Okay.
Now, to your point about being impressed with her success in convincing Kalam that she wasn't some villain that needed to be taken out, I really enjoy this conversation between her and him, the way she went about it. It really changes the way I look at her.
It does. It does. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I bear this in mind for the rest of the series a lot better, because everything is through the will of Lasine at later on. You know what I'm saying? It's mostly like through Tavora that I have any impressions of Lasine. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly just that Lasine lets Tavora do her thing. What it is that Lasine is a brilliant talent scout too. And she knows when to let people do their thing. She gets people to do jobs because she trusts them to do the job, and they do the job until she can't trust them.
I don't think we can really get too deep into the talent scout aspect. I'd be curious to see who you think are her good picks besides one in particular.
I can't think of many other people, but was, she didn't cull everybody from the ranks. I mean, she let Coltrane stay. And apparently this stuff with Dujek, I mean, that's just masterful. It's risky, but you can't do things without risk. You got to take the big risk to get the big reward kind of deal.
Right.
So her land, she laid all her cards out on the table. Mm-hmm. I was just impressed with that. And if this was a D&D game, she had to have rolled a natural 20. It's a called shot to convince Kalam, to get him to not kill her. But it's like it wasn't even that. It's just that she was so reasonable. And having spelled it all out for him, it's almost like he's like, why didn't I suss that out myself? Mm-hmm. Kind of like, it's all there. Why didn't I see that? That's brilliant. Yeah. And and you know what? And you were honest with me. Not only that, she wants him alive.
True. finding out that Lucine was never in the room to begin with and that she was speaking through a corpse, that was cool.
Yeah, as I said, that was a core memory for me. And that was a weird backward core memory because it's at the end when you kind of put it all together, like I said, when you're like, that's really cool.
Yeah. Apt and company showing up in a really opportune moment to save Kalam and Manala. That was cool.
Yes. I always like when Apt shows up. It's always kind of funny when she shows up at the right time just to come, because she somehow is, I don't know if she's in love or just loves Kalam somehow. I mean, it's something about him. She loves him somehow. And she's smart. She's not like a dumb animal. It's something else. We'll never know what that is. I don't think we'll ever know what that is.
The way Shadow Throne talks about her. He's
my word.
He's mad.
Oh, my word. He's always mad.
Yeah. I want to know what leverage she has over him.
She's smarter than he is. And that's what's bad. It's like she's like outsmarted him a couple times, outfoxed the fox. You're like, okay, what's up with this? What's up with her?
Yeah. The sack of cloth packs finally making its impact.
Oh, and quite an impact. Ouch.
Yes.
Triple exclamation point there. Ouch.
Shadow Throne's recognition of the value of soldiers like Fiddler to the Empire. Really like seeing that.
I do too. And it's still, what's funny about that also gave me a big insight into Shadow Throne with his act of craziness, because he gets real set. And when he's crazy, I'm wondering if I'm mistaking his craziness for his mocking, because he said, I'm not mocking you. Maybe everything he does is mocking, and that's why he giggles and laughs and all that stuff. But it's an act, apparently, when he wants to put it off, and him recognizing that was, I'm like you. It's like, that's very cool.
And then finally finding out what Shadow Throne did with the children that he saved off all those crucifixion.
Yeah.
What do they call them? It's just a cross, or?
Yeah. Well, it's just, they were crucified. However they did it, they were nailed to something. So yes, Shadow Throne's really a big softy. Not really.
Yeah. He only did it because Apt somehow forced him to.
Yeah.
Whatever leverage she has over him.
I know.
Yeah. They must have some deal or something.
Yeah. It's too funny.
But either way, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, great job, man. Great chapter.
Yes. I think we only have one more, right?
One more, probably one more in an epilogue, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Oh, it's a great chapter. I love how it's all coming together. It's just, so good. So good.
Yeah.
Great episode, man.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.